but the novel itself is a little over 400 pages, and it is mostly... I forget where I was. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Rachel and this is my booktube. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe down in the description below. You can also find my Twitter, my Instagram, and my Goodreads if you want to be friends there. And I would also really suggest you actually take a look at my Booktube Newbie Tag. It's a video I made recently that introduces you to me as a person, and I worked really hard on it, so I'd appreciate it. Let's get down to business to what today is about. So, as you can see right here, I read ADDIE LARUE, The Invisible Life of ADDIE LARUE by V.E. Schwab. This is a book that has taken the book world by storm. Not even just BookTube, I think that everyone, like outside of BookTube even, has heard of this book. V.E. Schwab is a very prolific and famous author now at this point, and so I had to get my hands on it and I had to read it myself. Let's get into the review. So this review is going to be broken up into like 5 different parts. I'm just warning you ahead of time that I actually felt very disappointed in ADDIE LARUE. I was underwhelmed. It's not my favorite read. But if you are someone who really enjoyed this and don't feel like hearing all of the negative thoughts that I have about it, skip to this timestamp because that is when I'm actually going to start ranting about why this is still an amazing book and why I don't want to discourage anyone from reading it. In fact, I encourage people to read it. Part 1, the writing. I think everyone who has picked up this book is very well aware of how good the writing is, and it is. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the writing isn't good. It's phenomenal, actually. It's fantastic. It really feels as though V.E. Schwab thought about every single sentence she was writing, every bit of dialogue, every scene, every word even that was put down on paper in this manuscript was poured over. V.E. Schwab loved this book, and she loves her craft, and you can read that and you can feel it in the writing. The writing is like sinking into a beautiful dream world, like this French pastry, and it's delicious and phenomenal. There's really no other way to describe how good the writing was in this book. Like, I can't praise it enough. Unfortunately, the writing is not enough to carry the rest of the book for me. In fact, it feels like the writing broke its spine carrying this entire novel. By the end of the book, I felt like I had basically just eaten a whole bunch of pastries all day and candy, and I was just craving substance. I just wanted a real meal. So the writing was beautiful, gorgeous, everything you'd ever want out of a writing. But unfortunately, that pulls me into the next part, which is part 2, the plot. Inherently, I think the plot of this novel is very creative. I am very intrigued by deals with the devil sort of archetypes, and I think that the way this book handles Addie's curse and the way this book handles all of the parameters of that curse and how it seamlessly blends all of it into the rest of the novel was done very well. There's nothing particularly new about a girl who makes a deal with the devil. In the book, it's kind of a little bit more ambiguous. I don't really think of Luke, the devil character, as the devil in a Christian sense. I think he is just this entity of darkness, really. But it's not a new concept, is what I'm trying to say. But V.E. Schwab did do it some justice. So the plot itself is Addie makes this deal that she wants to be free forever to live her life however she wants to. And so Luke curses her to be forgotten by everyone she ever comes across, and also that she is immortal until she says she doesn't want to be anymore. After 300 years, she meets Henry Strauss, a beautiful boy that works in a bookstore, and he actually remembers her the next time they have a meeting, and the book sort of goes from there. So my problem with this plot itself is that other than what I just described to you, there really isn't any plot after that. I'm used to more, I guess. I wanted more subplots or more intrigue, something interesting, maybe a twist. And there is a little bit of a twist. No spoilers, I want this to be a completely spoiler-free review, but I'm sure you know what I mean when I say there's another kind of twist with Luke and Henry and Addie, obviously, because how can Henry know or remember her? once she meets Henry, it kind of just feels like it's a slice of life weird contemporary almost. It's like a contemporary with a fun little twist. Like, no one remembers Addie except for Henry, so they gotta have strange dates where she's constantly reintroduced to his friends and stuff like that. And it just felt like every scene I was reading was really just Henry and Addie going on dates together, like weird little hipster dates in New York. Like, they went to cool museums and art festivals and stuff like that, and they got together and drank on a roof with his friends, and it just, I didn't care, I guess. Like, I wanted more. I wanted, why can Henry remember her? What is this? What's going on? Etc. It just didn't, nothing was pushing it forward, really. The thing that I really didn't like about the plot was the romance is beautiful, but this book is so focused on the romance aspect of Addie's life. It's strange to me. So you figure Addie is 300 years old. No one ever remembers her, so obviously she can never engage with people in an intimate or romantic manner past a first date or a hookup or a one-night stand. And the book really goes into that. And I think it's tragic and sad, and there's a lot of really gut-wrenching scenes involving that. But if I was forgotten by everyone I know in this like instant, or if I lived 300 years and everyone forgot me, would you not also crave just friendship? It seemed like Addie only really ever discussed how she would never fall in love with anyone, or she constantly fell in love with people but they never remembered her. But there's never any talk about just friendship or even really familial relationships. Addie's family doesn't remember her anymore, but I don't feel like we really sat with that or got enough of that. We did get some, but not enough in my opinion. I would be devastated if I lost my boyfriend, but I also can't imagine a world where I don't have my best friend, and it seemed very isolating in that way. This book is all about romance, and I think there is so much more to life and learning to be happy in life than romance. That is a personal quirk of mine, I can admit. I don't want to necessarily say it's a bad choice in the novel if you didn't notice it, but I did, very much so. So, a slight tie-in from the plot is my next point, which is the timeline. So this book is set in two point of views, which a lot of us didn't know going into it. I don't think I didn't know that it was also going to be in Henry's point of view. So you have Henry and Addie, and then on top of having two point of views, there's two different timelines for both of them. So we get Addie in the 1700s and Addie in present day, and then we get Henry in present day and then Henry from a year ago. And that felt very jumbled to me. And I don't think that Victoria Schwab necessarily did it in a bad way. I think that she did it in the best way that she could and in the best way that lended to the story. But unfortunately for me as a reader, I felt very stifled by the timelines. Anytime I was reading a chapter that was from the 1700s for Addie, I just didn't care. It didn't feel like information I necessarily needed. I do understand that it was important to see the struggles that she went through and to see what her life was like before she met Henry, before present day. But towards the end especially, I was just like, oh my God, can we please just get back to present day? I just want to know what's going on with Addie right now. All of the chapters from the 1700s, none of them flow together in the same way that the present day timeline does. It's just a snippet after a snippet after a snippet after a snippet. And I just really didn't like that. Then you add in Henry, you have another point of view, and the entire time I'm reading Henry, I'm slightly like, kind of wish I was reading about Addie right now. And then Henry also has snippets from another timeline. Do you see what I mean? There were a lot of things that were stopping me constantly from enjoying the book because I just wanted to know what was going on. And so with the point of views, on to my next point, which is the characters. Unfortunately, I was not the biggest fan of either Addie or Henry. That is not to say that I disliked them, because I didn't. I just didn't care about them. I didn't feel anything towards them. For Addie, she has all of these elements of a female character that I love. She's strong and driven. She's basically saying fuck you to the devil and doing her best, and she's a survivor. But other than that, I can't really tell you exactly who Addie is. We spent so long with her. I spent 2 different timelines with her, but I still don't have a good grasp on her character or who she is outside of never really getting to experience a romantic connection with people, and that's kind of sad to me. I wish I knew Addie more. I wish I could connect to her character more. I think for some people she's probably a beautiful character that people really, really connect with, but for me, her personality, nothing about it shined through in the text. I will say there were moments when I was reading about her life and reading from her point of view that did get to me. There are parts of this book that are very, very sad in regards to Addie and what she goes through. You can't live for 300 years and not have tragic moments, and there were times when I was reading and I was just like, oof, this is rough. But it still didn't make me feel much more than like, oof, this is rough. In a lot of ways, the book felt like, even though it was from Addie's point of view, a lot of what we knew about Addie was just the opinions that other people had on her, like Henry or her one-night stands, or the way that she affected people. And I don't want to know all about Addie from other people's point of views. I'm reading from her perspective. I want to know about her from her. As for Henry, unfortunately, Henry and we didn't jive. We didn't click. The one thing that I will say about Henry that I did like, I think he's a very, very accurate portrayal of depression and mental illness. I think that Schwab did a fantastic job writing from his point of view as someone who is clearly struggling with depression. For me, unfortunately, I feel as though Henry teetered somewhere between being very relatable while also being very exaggerated, and he was hard to really care for. I think someone else mentioned in another video where it was like, you know, all of these things that Henry's struggling with, everyone struggles with, so it's hard to like sympathize with him because that's kind of just what being in your late 20s is like. As someone who is 28, yeah, I totally get where he's coming from. I too feel sometimes like I've let my parents down or my family down. I too struggle with knowing who I am, etc. All of those things. But instead of making him relatable, it just sort of made him like, we get it, dude. We've all been there, you know? And I also just don't really know about Henry as a character other than his depression. And I have to say, he does really feel like the kind of guy everyone wants to date. You know, he's a lanky, curly-haired boy with round-rimmed glasses that lives in New York, that works at a used bookstore, who has hobbies like photography. Like, does that not just sound like the kind of guy that everyone has a crush on at one point or another? Basically, this novel is about hipsters in New York, really, more than anything else. But that isn't the kind of guy that I really gravitate towards, so as a romantic interest, I was just kind of lost. At the end of the day, with Addie and Henry, they felt so wrapped up with each other that I just couldn't find myself caring enough about either of them separately. Once they got together, my main intrigue was, how can Henry remember her? How is this gonna work? And that's really it. I didn't care about them outside of those two intriguing potential plot twists. Which brings me all the way to the end, which is my next point, the end. For everyone who liked this book, this is gonna be your favorite part of the video, if you didn't just skip to this part, because I'm gonna say a whole bunch of really great shit about this book now. So the ending of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is one of my favorite book endings I think I've come across. It was the most satisfying conclusion to a story that I've read in a really long time, and I literally just made an entire video about my favorite book series that I finished, well, partially finished. I mean, if I finished the Red Rising trilogy and then read this and still think that this had one of the most satisfying endings I've read in a really long time, that's saying something. I think that this ending was emotionally driven and it was poignantly done, and there was no way this book could have ended in another way that I would have liked. I didn't see the ending coming at all either, which is really rare for me anyway, for a book like that I'm not enjoying. Usually I'm not enjoying a book because I can already see how it's gonna end. And I had already figured out a couple different ways that this book could have ended, and every conclusion I imagined in my brain, I was like, man, that's gonna suck. This isn't gonna be cool. That's not going to be emotionally satisfying. And guess what? Schwab did that shit. She smacked me across the face and said, no, sis, this book has an ending, and it does. Like I said, I want this to be a spoiler-free review, so I'm not gonna talk about exactly how it ended, just that it's an ending that I cannot stop thinking about. I think that the reason I can't enjoy this book is because if I reread it again, which I do see myself going back to, there's gonna be huge portions of the book I skip, because I didn't care. But that ending is gonna feel satisfying every time, I think. To wrap up this video, I want to talk not just about ADDIE LARUE and the book itself, but the really cool thing that happened to me while I was reading this book, which is gonna sound really corny, but I think that reading this book was such a strange experience because as I was reading it, I was like, I don't like this. You know, this isn't a book I'm enjoying, but it was so easy to see all of the components that people would love and why people 5-star this book. As I'm reading it, I'm reading lines and I'm like, that is definitely something someone could get tattooed on them or something that people are going to quote over and over again. These are two characters that while I really didn't like that much are going to be so impactful and important and beautiful to people. And I just think that's so cool. Very rarely do I remember that as a community, the bookish sphere and whatnot is comprised of hundreds of different personalities and people and whatnot. This book really reminded me that you can have a book that is so polarizing and so different that it really brings the community together in a weird way. I binge watched a whole bunch of videos about ADDIE LARUE even though I didn't really like it, which brings me to the point of I think you should read this book. I don't want to tell you shouldn't read this book. I don't want you to be discouraged. I think that if you watched this video and you were like, man, I don't want to read that, you should still, because this is a book that is so different and so strange and interesting that I can't pinpoint who would and who wouldn't like this book. And I just think that's beautiful. I think books are beautiful. And this book did remind me why I love reading so much. For a book that I am giving 3 whopping stars to, and I'm making an entire review on why I didn't like it, it's still a book that impacted me because it just made me realize that I could really appreciate a book that really makes me think. That's what I'm trying to say. And a book that makes me love my book community. I loved watching people read this. I loved watching everyone's opinion on this, whether it was good or bad or not. And I know there's 100 million books out there that can do that. Like I said, I didn't read The Name of the Wind and like it, but that's also some people's 5-star holy grail books. But something about this book just really tugged that at me, just really reminded me like, damn, we are all different people with all different tastes. So read ADDIE LARUE. Tell me what you think about it. Tell me what you thought about ADDIE LARUE down in the comments if you've already read it. Are you interested in reading it, etc. That's the end of my review. I'm gonna wrap it up here. I've been talking for a hot minute, so thank you so much for watching this. If you are still here, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. Really, really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I really, really love you so much. I love you so much. Bye.